The following presentation was recorded live for the 18th Annual Convention of CALLERLAB. We take you live to the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, where our session is just getting underway.
All comfortable and seated down. To my right here, we have John Marshall from... Are you still from Vermont, is it? Where are you from? Virginia, okay. And Jim, you're from New Hampshire, right? No, very same. Jim Mayo, both members of the board, both... Well, this guy here is a full-time caller. Jim is about to become a full-time caller. He tells me he retires in June. And I'm about to do the same thing. I retired about 5 days ago. So that gives you an... So this session is on voice. I'm supposed to be the moderator, and what's going to happen right about now is the fact that I'm going to take the privilege of the moderator and talk about 15 minutes on the voices of calling. We all think of our voice as a communication device. Actually, it's a little more than that. It's like a Stradivarius. It's probably the most expensive instrument you'll ever own. It's one that you should take care of, and it's one that you should learn to use. When you start to drive a car, you have to learn to drive that car. And you really should learn to use your voice. Now, what I mean by using it, as a communication device, as an entertainment device, and as a mood projection device. Now, I think of your voice as having four sections. You have an emotional voice. You have a talking voice, which is the one that I'm using right now. You have a singing voice, which is the one you use for calling. And you have a body voice, which a lot of us ignore. And that body voice is a very important one. But really, the most important one that you'll have is the emotional voice. That's the one that projects your mood to the floor. Even when you're talking. I'm talking now in what you would call a directive mood. I'm trying to inform somebody. Now, if I was trying to be nice to my wife, I would use a little different mood. I would say, dear, would you like to go out to the show with me tonight? Or how about coming up? No, she's not here, is she? I better be careful what I say. But really, you can project an image. And if you're mad at your wife or you're mad at somebody, it comes across as a very forceful type of discussion. And the same thing when you were calling. If I turn around and start to talk, you can almost tell when I start to smile, because it's a little different sound in my voice. And it's very important that you project that image when you're calling. Because if you want a happy dance, you have to project happiness to your crowd. If you want to project a love song, you have to be able to project love in your voice. And these things are not learned easy. And there's a lot of things interfering with those voices that you use. If you've had a fight with your wife before the dance, or the kids have been out late and you've been annoyed with them, many things can interfere with it. But it's something that you as a caller can learn to use. You can actually falsify or structure yourself into that mood. You can psych yourself into that mood. So that when you want to call, you can have a happy voice or a very sad, very, well, I don't care type of voice. You can have a commanding, domineering voice. You can be very demanding in what you say. Or you could have a sexy voice. There's a lot of the top callers today have developed sexy voices. And there's one, I'm not going to tell you his name. He also developed a sexy body voice. And I believe it was about 5 years ago here at CALLERLAB, in one of the sessions on entertainment, he was talking about an incident that happened. And he was imitating Tom Jones. That's the only way I can describe it, because he had all the sexual gyrations, and he was doing a song called Honey, I Need You. And he did an excellent job. I've heard him do this. And after it was all over, there was a little old lady come up, and she says, buddy, I don't need you. So you also have to be careful of the image that you project body-wise, because your body voice probably tells more than any other voice you will use. As you heard from our discussion this morning, your body projects, I think he said 83%, didn't he, or something like that, of what you are projecting to the floor. If you stand up there and you're very lax in your stance, the dancers say, oh boy, look at him. If you stand up there tall and you move to the music and you're happy with your motions and this type of thing, you are projecting, again, that to your dancers. When you're instructing, again, you have to be informative, you have to be clear, your diction has to be right. So please, I shouldn't say please, that's not the right word. The way to learn these things is to watch, first of all, the people that you enjoy as a caller. You will find that a lot of the top callers, the callers who are great leaders, have this ability. Listen to them, see how they do it. If there is a small theater group in your area, go to it. Maybe join it if you have time. Take a small part in one of their plays. Watch what the actors do. Because part of what we are doing is really acting. We are trying to duplicate emotions when we're calling. If you put on a singing call, and I did not bring one in particular, which I had wanted to do, and I thought I would get it here. I didn't find it before I left, but this particular one, you know the tune, I believe, and when I put it on here, you'll be happy. It's a very popular chaparral up in our area. I hope this music is working. Good, we're starting. You can do it as a crooner. Well, girl, I'll sing you love songs every morning, and I'll be there to help you through the night. That's an average presentation. There's no emotion, no nothing in it. Well, girl, I'll sing you love songs every morning, and I'll be there to help you through the night. Now, if you want to be real sexy, you talk it. Well, girl, I'll help you, and I'll be there to help you anytime. It's all right. So you can change the words, you can change the meter, you can change the words to get the effect. You are communicating with your dancers via your voice. And it's very important that you learn to do these things. There are many other things when, as I say, when you're calling. I think John and Tony Oxendine did an excellent job of their communication when they were doing their what did you call it, John? Your entertainment, was it? Showmanship? Really, what I'm talking about is showmanship using your voice. Try taping your voice sometime and listen to it. Does it project the emotions that you want? Can you project those emotions? And if you can't, I would say try to. It will make you a better caller in the long run. Your voice, it's a marvelous instrument. And you should learn to use it. You shouldn't abuse it. And it'll last you a lifetime and give you many, many wonderful hours. But don't just be somebody that stands up and repeats the words. Learn to put emotion into your voice. Learn to use your body voice. Learn to use your talking voice. Learn to communicate with your voice. I'm going to turn this on over to John because he has some technical things to talk about. And then we'll have Jim, and then we'll come back with questions. Okay?
Thank you, Martin. We appreciate it. All right. The point that Martin's making, of course, is very valid. There's a concern. It's fine that Martin says use your body voice or use your head voice. If you know a little bit about that, if you've heard that term before about, projecting through out of the mask of your face, or whether you're going for forehead projection and things of that sort. But all of it comes back to control. So we're going to talk a little bit about control today. Some things never change. There are some things that are just plain, simple facts. They have to do with how we were made, how the apparatus works. And some of you have heard some of these things before. That's because it doesn't change. But we forget. We get sloppy. We stop being conscious about the things we need to know about. I want to explode a couple myths before we get really rolling into some of this. The first one, the old myth about you can do the high notes of the Star Spangled Banner if you stay on your toes, doesn't work. Right? Has nothing to do with voice. Lowering your head will not help you hit low notes any better than if you have your head up high, except that it might make them a little richer if you keep your head up. We'll talk about why. One of the newest myths is that if you've been asked to do the Star Spangled Banner at a given festival or an annual thing, and we all know what a joy that particular piece of music is to sing. Most of us have caught on if we have to do it, right? Well, we've caught on. First thing is you don't use any music. Then you can pick your starting point, right? You might have a shot at it on one end or the other, and it might only be half bad. One of the ways it's now come out as a new standard on how not to have to do it more than once is that if at the end of it you scratch and spit, chances are you won't ever have to do it again. Isn't that what happened to Roseanne? Whatever. A lot of us talk about little things like these mentholyptus drops, eucalyptus, which I hope is not a brand name. There's a problem with that I'm taught about. Eucalyptus oil, which is part of that product, will unfortunately tend to, over a period of time, swell tissues, soft tissues. That's something you would like to avoid. You don't need any other interferences. But what do we do when we're in an environment like this, a very dry hall, forced air conditioning, or heat in the wintertime, depending on what part of the country you're from? I'll recommend very readily for you a product called Ricola. And you'll see it advertised. In some parts of the country, they're advertising it with these three fellas blowing the big horns here, I don't know what they call those. What do they call those, Martin? No? Okay. Alpine horns, rather? Okay. In any event, these are all natural. I happen to know for a fact that these are what the people at the New York Metropolitan Opera use as far as keeping their voices moist, their throats moist. They're very nice in terms of clearing sinuses, very gentle. Most major food stores often carry them. Health food stores always carry them. And they're called Ricola Swiss Herb family candies, I guess, drops. Swiss herb drops, and they come in some flavors. They have an original plus some others. I'd recommend those to you because you get away from that potential problem. Try one of those babies, Jim. It's good. That's the I think that's the taco version. No, it's I bet it's and you have the extra sour lemon over here. No, that's not true. But they work well. It's Ricola. Ricola, Ricola, and we'll leave the package up here. You can take a look. Please don't sample. It's the only package I have, and I'm planning to need it at the board meeting. Actually, I think I'm really going to need it tomorrow morning about 9 o'clock. You have a question? He wants to know what flavor Whorehound is. It's licorice, is it not? No? What is it? Is this flavor? Oh, it's the flavor that you're working on. Try to identify that. Another thing. How many times do we hear, don't drink cold water when you're calling? It'll tighten up your vocal cords. Well, it would be very uncomfortable, I will grant you that. We have a trachea, which is our windpipe. We have an esophagus, which is where the food goes, and hopefully the water. And, it's basic, guys, but we don't think about it. We say, oh, yeah, that's right. If you're swallowing down your windpipe, it may do more than tighten the vocal cords. You could probably, with all likelihood, you'll clear your sinuses real well as at the same time. However, really cold liquids can tend to tense or have a tissue reaction in the mouth and throat area. When you swallow into the throat area. So that can happen but that way, but not your vocal cords. That carries it to a bit of an extreme. So that's just a couple little things for fun along the way. I talked about control. The only way control is going to happen for you is going to be practice and practice and more practice, and then we have a habit. And you have to come back every so often and make sure you're holding on to the habit, because we talk over and over and over again about breath support. You hear it all the time. You got to have a lot of breath support. You got to fill up those lungs. Lots of air. get ready to go. And if you breathe up here, you fill up those lungs and expand them, that's real good, but unfortunately it's not good for very long, and it's not good for a variety of things like tightening up your shoulders, your upper chest, your lower throat, because that's not how you want to breathe. You need to breathe first deeply and down through. It feels like you're drawing air down into your stomach. If you take a Wintergreen Lifesaver, pick a product, and use that, having chewed that up, and then draw the air and feel the coldness of that air going down. Feel it going down as far as you possibly can. That's the area you want to breathe to. Because what we want to do is expand our diaphragm and use that diaphragm, which is a muscle that sits up underneath the lungs. We want to use that muscle to help control what's going on with our airflow. And what we're looking for foremost, besides full amounts of air, is controlling what happens with that air. And that gets a lot trickier because we don't breathe that way naturally and control that way naturally. The muscle that affects the use of the diaphragm is the rectus abdominis muscle. It wraps around the front. For a man, it's approximately 2 inches below his navel. For a lady, I'll ask you to measure from the other direction up, slightly higher, somewhere in between that. Okay? And what you have is a way of finding out and identifying that muscle. It's one we don't think about. Somebody just used it. Somebody used it over here. And a good way to find it and get a sense of what it feels like, because we don't use it and we're not always conscious of it, and we need to be, if you'll put your hands or your forefingers down just in that area that I've talked about, and there's nothing indecent about this, and if you will simply press against that part of your abdomen, your lower abdomen, and if you will cough, you will feel that muscle work. Just you can actually feel it. If it feels like that muscle's moved a little bit higher, then move your fingers up a little bit or lower till you find it. It's a good way to identify where it is and where it's working from. But that's what you're going to be using to control what's happening in the diaphragm. And what we want is a fully connected air passage from the lowest area where you've drawn the air at the bottom of the lungs, fully expanded, and controlling the expulsion of that air up through the passageway between the vocal cords. We want to be able to draw in and fill to full expansion. We want to be able to then use that muscle by contracting it and pulling down the diaphragm and pushing the air up through the lungs in one steady motion all the way up through and out. And that will only come with practice. And that's fine for me to say that, but until you have a way of sensing and feeling that muscle and learning how to use it, it won't happen. Now, I want to do a couple things with you. One of them I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do. It's hard to do in front of a lot of people. If any of you had voice lessons, you know that so many of the exercises that we have are silly. They really are. I mean, we do lots of weird things. I mean, you'll see people have you put your fingers down your mouth and so on. But there's a way that we can work on a couple of different exercises that we're going to do just a little bit of so that you can really feel and sense this muscle. I'm going to ask Martin and Jim if they'll each take a balloon and for yourselves and pass the others out to anybody and everybody who's interested in using them. Doesn't matter. You've got all kinds of colors here, and we have plenty of extras. Now, please don't grab the balloons and stretch them all out and make animal figures. Don't do anything with them yet. We're going to talk about what to do with them. And we're going to get Martin and Jim to be able to get to go first on this so that they can see. Nobody asked you to do that. Right? Please understand what we're doing here. Right? What we're asking you to do here is not blow up a balloon. We're not asking you to blow up a balloon at all. What we're asking you to do is become aware, truly aware of the muscle that you need to use and how to control it. Right? Yes, whoever, we have plenty. Guys in the back. I can tell Larry needs one of those. Larry, sit up straight. You're going to need one of these. Give Larry one of them, them 38 millimeter balloons, the thick ones. Give him that canvas balloon back there. He'll like that. Right? It'll work for him. All right, we have more if you need them. One more package up here, I think, is what we have. Okay, sure. And while they're still passing those out, we'll get back to how we're going to use that in just a moment. I will try, if I can, to show you another exercise that, much to my surprise, I found almost impossible to do when I first started trying to get some voice training. And I just couldn't believe it was going to be hard to do until I tried it. Most of us can do this very nice horse sound, of vibrating your lips. You can do that. It's a very easy thing to do. And what it does, you have to in order to do it, you have to relax your face, the facial muscles, the neck. It has to be relaxed. If you tighten, if you smile and try to do that, it's not going to happen. Right? That's not a big deal. But trying to do that and carry a note scale at the same time is a little harder. I'm not sure if I can do it. If I'd been practicing more like I should have been, I could have started higher and done more notes. If you try that, and you don't have to do it here because I know it's hard to do. You feel really ridiculous trying to do that. If you'd like to change places with me, you'll see how it really feel ridiculous doing that in front of people. And they can take him away now. Right? Pick a natural note area and work your way down the scale or up the scale or get to the point where you can do both. I guarantee you, you can't do that without employing the muscle that we're talking about in terms of controlling tightly, and you'll feel it pulling as you try to control to get that breath support all the way through while keeping everything up here loose. And that's what you want. You want things to be loose and open so that you are not restrictive. This will help improve things like your pitch, your range, the naturalness of your voice. It'll give you a more general ease of your overall presentation. Now, what we do with the balloon, and at least this one we don't feel quite so ridiculous doing, to blow up the balloon without expanding your cheeks, without filling your cheeks with air to add extra pressure, take a normal breath and then think about using this muscle to control the expulsion of air to blow up the balloon without puffing your cheeks. I'll ask Martin and Jim to both try that. Right? Now, sure, you can stand. It's fine. But understand, we're not worried about blowing up the balloon. What we want you to understand here is what it feels like to know which muscle it is. Right? Right? Okay, both guys did it. But the question is, can you feel what's happening here? Because, there you go. He never could do that before, right? Weak cheeks. Right? He's going to do a session on vocal cords in just a moment. All right? That's the idea. Everybody try it. But think about the muscle. Think about the muscle we're talking about using. Don't puff your cheeks. All right? If you realize, right? Now this man's cheating. I saw you. I mean, we got cheeks out to here, right? Okay. Yeah, this gentleman's getting red in the face over here, right? Yes, they'll love this on the tape. I believe this is a recorded session, isn't it, Martin? They're going to love this on the tape. Okay, children. All right. Now. I've created a monster. Now's the time you turn it back to Martin, who only took 7 minutes of the hour. Right. Now, let me talk to you, though, about that. What I really wanted you to do is be aware. You've got to be aware of that muscle and learn how to control the muscle. You need to do exercises, whether it be the balloon. The lip buzz really is an excellent exercise. I'll ask you to trust me on that, because if somebody walks in here now and we're all doing, they'll just lock the damn doors. I mean, I know how those exercises look and feel. Do it when you're alone. Try it. See what happens. It really requires that control. And when you have that, it's going to allow you to do a lot more in your range, in both directions, allowing everything to free up in terms of your shoulders, your upper chest, your neck, because you don't want to breathe from the upper chest. You're going to run out of air. You don't have the control that you need. But practice over and over and over again, exercise, and then what is really neat is once you've done some of these exercises and really gotten a sense of what you need to do, of working that muscle in, letting it out as you breathe in, contracting it back and forth, all down here, all down low. As soon as that happens, and then try it on your singing calls. Think about it. Think about breathing that way. Don't breathe up here. Breathe down here and then control what you have. And watch what happens to your singers. I think you will honestly find that they become easier to do, your range will expand, and after a period of time you'll find yourself trying to go some places in those singers that you haven't gone before. In some cases it'll sound like where no one has ever gone before, but that's practice. You might. I'll tell you what, I've done Star Spangled Banner, and it helps a bunch on things like that when you have to go with that. Not all of us are given that kind of a range to start with. You can expand and improve your range. But breath control and breath support is what we're talking about, and it's that muscle group, the rectus abdominis, the diaphragm muscle, and control of that that's going to give you that. I know it's clinical, I know it's technical, but it's real, and it makes a difference. But it's something that you want to keep doing on a regular basis, get in the habit of it, learn how to feel that muscle. You know, if your significant other happens to come home and you're in the shower doing the lip buzz, you know, maybe you just better not explain it at all. Just tell them you left your rubber ducky somewhere else and you were doing this instead. I don't know. There is a silly thing, but it does work. You will find also if you're doing it correctly, after a period of time you'll have to stop because your face will itch. You will find that from the vibrations, you'll find you have to stop after a while because it gets a little crazy feeling. But it will make a difference for you, and it's a tool that you can use, and it's just part of the overall voice control and some of the skills you need to work and develop to be able to use your voice well. And that's what I have on this section. Jim, you're next. Did you bring any candy?
I feel sort of secondhand here because I don't have any props. Stand up. Thank you. You may now sit down again. I thought you might like to stretch. But the point I want to make is that I don't need this kind of competition. The point I wanted to make with that is that part of correct voice use has nothing to do with the physical aspects and how you produce sound and how you enunciate. It has to do with the intention to communicate. And what I conveyed to you just then was my intention that you should in fact do something, that you should stand up. And the way I said it convinced you all that I intended to produce some action. And in fact, I got the action I intended to produce. You stood up. You didn't stand there and question why. You didn't wonder whether I really intended for you to stand up. You just did it. For square dance callers particularly, that's an important aspect of using your voice. It is the intention to communicate. You must, when you call square dances, tell people what to do. That's what calling is. It is not singing a song. We sometimes do that also. But it is first, foremost, and always telling people what to do. In order to accomplish that, we have to know what it is that we want them to do. One of the most interesting experiences I had with respect to voice operations came many years ago in a caller's school that I was working. And the first night of the school, we asked everyone to get up and do a little calling. And one of the students there came, and we the staff were introduced to this person with the explanation that he didn't know how to square dance. He had come to the school on the advice of his friends because he was a magnificent singer. And indeed, he had a marvelous voice. He was a professional singer, semi-professional singer. Sang frequently, sang beautifully. And he stood up, took the microphone with 3 squares of callers and their partners, all of whom had demonstrated throughout the evening that they were quite competent dancers. And he launched into a singing call that was absolutely beautiful. And the squares broke down. So he started over again. And he got along in the singing call, never did make it to the first chorus, only got to the introduction, never did make it through the introduction. And that's when I began to realize that it's not enough to sing beautifully and to get all the words right. He didn't have any trouble with that. He was used to memorizing words, and they all came out correctly. But people couldn't dance to it because he had no idea at all what those words meant. There was no communication in his delivery. He didn't tell people what to do. He sang a song, and it did not communicate. And an important part of proper voice use has nothing to do with how you produce the voice. It has to do with whether you understand and know and are sure of what you intend to produce, meaning the action that happens on the floor. One of the outstanding performers of all time, who I'm pleased to say I'm finally going to get an opportunity to see in person, I never have before, Frank Sinatra, is noted for one particular aspect of his delivery, and that is his ability to communicate the meaning of the song. When Frank Sinatra sings a song, you know what it's about. The story of that song, the message of the song comes through. For me, the opposite of Frank Sinatra in that regard is Robert Goulet. And I don't know whether he's still around. I heard him come on record the other day on the radio. I guess they're playing his records more than I had heard recently. But Robert Goulet has an absolutely magnificent sounding voice. But when he gets through with a song, I don't have the foggiest idea what it was about. All I know is that I heard a very nice sound. But I don't know the story. I don't know what the song was saying. For square dance callers, that technique won't work. It is most important that when we deliver our calls, that we communicate the intended action to the dancers. We have to tell them. And that often gets overlooked. Most every caller who's starting out memorizes a singing call. There could not be a worse way to start calling. It will set you back substantially. I love the competition back here. Isn't that wonderful? Will set you back substantially in the course of learning to be a caller, because you do not understand the action. And we often use in caller school the technique of saying, oh, that was a wonderful singing call, and you've obviously learned it very well. Now let's put on a patter call and just call the same thing. We'll put on the hash music. They can't do it because they don't know what the words mean unless they have the melody to remind them of what words come next. They can't deliver the call. That tells you that they do not understand the message. They don't know the action that their calls are intended to produce on the floor. One of the things that we have the hardest time conveying to beginning callers is the fact that they cannot memorize words. They cannot memorize either the words of a patter call or the words of a singing call. What they must memorize is the action. They must know what action they expect to happen on the floor so that they can give direction to the dancers. And so one of the things you should keep firmly in mind as you call patter or singing is that the purpose of your voice use is to direct the dancers through the action. A very important part of voice use to keep in mind. One other thing I was interested to notice in the mechanics of voice use is that both of my counterparts up here have chosen to plant the microphone here on their chin as they talk. That's a habit that we callers have developed over the years, and I remember when I first started out, the caller coaches that I worked with all explained to me that that's what you do, so that when you turn your head, the microphone goes with you. I really have figured out that over the years, I could tell when I turned my head and the sound went away and bring the microphone along. And it's also true that since those days, when I began, it wasn't quite a megaphone. Brundage beat me to that. But it was, in fact, the omnidirectional microphone that we used, a microphone which picked up equally well from any direction. Nowadays, most callers are using single-direction microphones, microphones that pick up only from one direction. And there is a very substantial difference in the effectiveness of that microphone. If you take this microphone and turn it sideways, you hear a substantial loss in the voice production. If you did that with an omnidirectional, the old 636, the long pencil job that we used to use many years ago, wouldn't make any difference at all. It would pick up equally well from the side as it did from the front. But this microphone, and most of the microphones we use today, come with a little piece of paper inside, which gives you the serial number and the manufacturer and all that thing. But they very often include a polar diagram, which shows you the sensitivity range of the microphone. And what it shows you is that this microphone is designed to pick up best straight in the end. When you turn it sideways, you don't get anywhere near as good a reproduction. The same voice level from me produces a substantially different level out there. Keep that in mind when you're using a microphone. It's also true that it tends to pick up different frequencies variably depending on how far off axis you get. And so quality, the character of the voice also will change as you get off. Even if you turn the knob up loud enough to make it work this way or this way, you will change the quality of the sound that you produce. You also recognize that some of the sound that you produce does come out through the nose. And so you'd like the microphone out in a position to blend all of the sound sources and produce the full quality of your voice. I would strongly recommend that you consider developing the habit of holding the microphone out in front where it belongs, because it will do a much better job of picking up the sound. One further aspect that I note very often with callers, and John talked about the importance of breathing. Surely that's true. We need to get an adequate supply of air so that we can keep the air flowing out of our mouth all of the time that we're producing sound. The reason you do that is to prevent damage to the vocal cords, because you need to keep them separated as they vibrate so that they don't rub together and produce sores and various other difficulties that vocal cords can develop. In order to do that, you need to have an adequate supply of air, and for that you use which muscle is it, John?
Rectus abdominis.
Thank you. I didn't ever know the name of that one. I knew where it was and I use it, but I didn't know its name. But you do have to not only have the supply of air there, you also need to keep it flowing all the time that you're producing sound. And one of the things that often happens at festivals and as you sit listening to a group of callers, you'll find every now and again that a caller comes along and he will start out very loudly, and then his voice will taper off because he's stopped breathing. He doesn't have enough. Then he'll take a deep breath and start in again, and it's very loud, and then pretty soon the air that he has wears out, and so he doesn't have enough air. Then he'll take a breath and start over again. Very common phenomenon with callers when you hear a group of callers one after the other at a festival situation, something like that. Be conscious of the fact that you should maintain a steady, equal flow of air until you run out, then take a breath. And one of the reasons that you use this muscle down here is so that you can take that breath quickly. If you are standing up straight so that the lung spaces are open, then using that muscle will now enable you to take in enough air to support the voice, to keep the air flowing very quickly. But if you let that chest cavity collapse and have to pick up the whole space in order to make room for the lungs to take in air, it will take you a lot longer, and you are likely to do it less frequently. You're likely to run out of air. Very important that you do remember both to take in the air and then to use it. Speaking of exercises you can do in private, if you'd like to experience a fully supported voice, one that has enough airflow, John said it wasn't natural to breathe this way. Not really true. If you look at babies we learn not to, right? We are taught that that's not the way to do it. When we come into the world, you look at a baby in a crib, and they're using that muscle beautifully. They do it naturally. That's the way it comes. Then somebody says, stand up straight, pull in your stomach. Now, breathe, chest out, yeah. And that's about as wrong as you can get. The chest out is nice. It gives room enough for the lungs, but everything else in there prevents an adequate supply of air. And so we are taught not to breathe correctly and not to use it in support of the voice. But the way you can get back to that is to lie down on the floor and put something down here where that muscle is. And as you breathe and speak, make that go up and down. Put a book down there. Bob Van Antwerp had a cruel voice coach who put a glass of water there. Wanted to get control as well as just some volume. And that's presumably. But you will find that the sound you produce, for many of you, will be noticeably different. When you're lying comfortably on the floor, breathing adequately and correctly, you will find it's easier to reach some notes. You will find some change in the way your voice behaves. The only task remaining for you is to convert this horizontal experience into a vertical one. Not easy to do. It takes a lot of practice. Unfortunately, just knowing what the rules are, doesn't produce the ability to use your voice correctly and to breathe correctly. Those of us who have been in the hands of a voice coach understand how long it takes to turn this technique into a habit. It's a long transition. But, oh, yeah. And it does go away if you don't practice it. One of the things that happens to us, and it happened to me a couple of years ago, I got fatigued. I was working longer than I wanted to and trying to call a heavier schedule than I should have, and I stopped paying attention to proper voice use, and I suddenly discovered I couldn't comfortably do some of the songs that had been easy for me. And it took me a couple of months to realize that what had happened was that I stopped using my voice correctly. I knew how, I knew all the rules, but I was just too tired. And just fatigue did me in. I did two things. One, I rested, and I also started following my own good advice. Went back and rechecked the rules and said, yes, I know how to do this. I practiced it, I worked at it, and indeed it got better. But if you should happen to get into that state and not recognize it, and not start to do something about it, it's possible to do harm to your vocal cords. They are very important for square dance callers. You'd like not to do them harm. I don't know where we go from here, moderator, but you've had my opening piece at least. Let's give it a go.
Thank you, Jim. Now I've got to start talking this way. One other thing that I have noticed about microphones, and I think Jim will back me up, some microphones have a characteristic that when you move them closer to the mouth, their frequency response changes. So that you can get a very different sound by taking it right to your voice or by taking it away. You lose some of these sibilants. You notice the S's come out much better when you're up close to the mic than when you're away. The frequency response of the microphone does change with distance from the mouth. Some of them are greater than others. And you should develop or try different microphones when you're calling. One other characteristic, and this was told me, I have not been able to prove this other than the fact that having one microphone fail, and out of curiosity I took it apart. The diaphragm that's on the front of your microphone is just like the speaker in your radio. It's a very small metallic type of diaphragm. This diaphragm does develop over a period of years of use characteristics that are characteristic of your voice. And you can actually, if you look at it under good light, you can actually see a ripple on it that is characteristic of that caller. And some callers believe, and there may be some truth in it, that they don't loan their mic, because as they have used the mic, it has developed characteristics that are good for them. It may be a rumor. As I say, I did it out of curiosity to see the microphone that I had used for 3 years. When it went down, I took it apart. There was ripples in it. It wasn't smooth, and it wasn't as a result of dropping it or anything like that. It just died. Always carry two mics, too. That's something else you'll find very quickly. Do we have any questions concerning voice? Or Deborah Parnell, you would like to share something, would you, Deborah? Well, this may be of importance. Please come up and use the mic. Yes, correctly. Lady callers have an entirely different, shall we say, voice characteristics. And you notice I said lady callers.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I asked John and Jim both before this session, caught him in the halls yesterday, and asked him if I could say a couple of things to you folks, because one of the things that they touched on that is so crucially important is that if you don't take care of your voice and it goes down, you're out of work. And not only are you out of work, you can't go to the bank and tell the teller what you want. You can't answer your phone when it rings. You can't yell at your children when they're naughty. You can't fight with your spouse. You can't do anything. You're stuck. And I had to go through that a year ago, a little over a year ago, and it was not because I injured my voice calling or because I used my voice improperly. I was always a natural singer, and I had no problems with the calling. I had a few little, my voice maybe be a little hoarse in the morning if I'd work 4 or 5 nights in a row. But I injured my voice severely, and I did it because I had gotten bronchitis last fall. I am normally a big, healthy Swede. I don't even get a cold. So when I got bronchitis, I thought, I can get over it. No problem. You know, it'll just go away. Well, by the time I finally went to the doctor, it was 3.5 months for me to get over it. Well, when I finally did get over it, I'd been hoarse, but I thought, well, once I get rid of the bronchitis, it'll be fine. What ended up happening, and I had to take 3 weeks off of work and total vocal rest. That means not a squeak, kids. You don't make a whisper. You are totally silent. What I had done is I had coughed so hard with this bronchitis, I ruptured a blood vessel in my vocal cord. Now, I didn't realize I had done that. When you injure your vocal cord thusly, there is no pain. You lose your range in whatever area of the cord, correct me if I'm wrong here, John, that the hemorrhage occurs. I lost 3/4 of an octave of my high range, poof, overnight. But I was so sick, you know, with all this other stuff, I figured, oh, well, it's just because of that. Well, and of course, being as we are all the type of callers that we are, we know that if we did not show up for a particular booking, the entire square dance activity would cease to exist in our area. So we're there whether we've got the flu, whether we're there. Well, I kept working, and what I ended up doing was creating a big lesion on the cord. And I had to end up going to a laryngologist in Hollywood, and I had to check into the hospital, and I had to have vocal surgery done. Then I had to have 2 months of speech therapy with a speech pathologist. And I now take vocal training once a week. But what I wanted to tell you folks is that if you don't take care of your voice, and it may have something that has nothing to do with calling, but if you're not aware of these things, you can end up having a $6,000 doctor bill like I had. You can end up being off of work for 3 months. You can end up having to go through all this, and I don't want you kids to go through that. So if I can get up here and just kind of take over for 2-3 minutes and tell you, please, 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 be aware of these things. Listen to these guys. Listen to the tapes over again. How many of you kids smoke? Come on, Arlen, raise your hand. All right, where'd he go? He's gone. Please don't. Okay, if you can't quit smoking, find a vocal clinic and get off the cigarettes. Do you hear me, Gary? Get off the cigarettes. Okay? They are poison. They are horrible. They are awful. You can find a free clinic and go through it and get off the cigarettes if you're not off them. If you're smoking, I'm sorry, I'm going to be blunt, but you're an idiot. Okay? So, the panel didn't say that. The panel didn't say that. I said it, okay? And I used to smoke. Kidneys, okay? Don't do that to yourself. So I just wanted to say, please take care of your voices. Don't go through what I had to go through, okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. What she says is very, very true. Do either of our gentlemen here have anything further to add to what has been said? We have about 15 minutes for open questions. So if you have any questions that you'd like to put forth or you have information you'd like to share, we'd love to have you with it. We have a gentleman down the far end. Oh, that's great. And who have we got coming up? Delmer Doyle from Houston.
I can't come behind that table. He told me this morning, get in the front. Get next to your audience. Would you mind if I sat on your lap? She had an experience with the medical profession. So did I. I do still have emphysema. And yes, dear, I smoke, and hell no, I ain't going to quit. Now, here's an exercise that the doctor gave me. Every one of you sitting here, whether you smoke or you don't, have dirty air in your lungs. Okay? From a sitting position. I'll turn sideways so you can see. Everybody, I'll show you what to do first, and then I want you to do it with me. Take a deep breath in through the nostrils. Open your mouth wide, and just blow it out. You're using the muscle he's talking about. But blow it out. Once it's blown out, I want you to purse your lips like you were going to whistle and continue to blow. Everybody do this one time. Deep breath in through the nostrils. Take it in, take it in, take it in. Blow it out through the mouth. Purse your lips. Keep blowing. Keep blowing. Keep going. Now go as long as you can. Stop. Okay. You do that, and right now I promise you there's not a person in this room that can do it 5 times without hyperventilating. You cannot do it 5 times without hyperventilating. The air in the bottom of your lungs needs to be cleansed. And that's the way to get the dirty air out and fresh air in. Start with it probably 2 times. The best times, first thing when you get up in the morning. Do that in the first thing. Anytime during the day you've got a chance to do it, and practice until you can do that. When you can do it 20 times, You don't have to see the doctors. Thank you.
Thank you much. Questions? Have we any questions out there? Yes, sir. Lip roll?
Okay. On the lip buzz, is it the same as beneficial or different? I'd had someone suggest that you do that just with humming and go through a range at the same time. But is one also useful but performs a different function? Okay.
The answer is yes to that question.
The useful function that humming produces is to get you used to air flowing out of the mouth, out of the nose, and producing sound that way. One of the exercises that's worth doing is to, how far back can I go before I hit the wall? Is to hum with your finger under your nose. You will feel air coming out of the nose as you do that hum. Then you want to convert to an open sound, and you'd like to have the air continue to come out of the mouth, out of the nose, as it also comes out of the mouth. And the exercise, listen to me once and then try it yourself. But you're going to go, me. And as you change from a closed hum to an open E sound, you should be able to feel the air continue. Many of you, as you try this, will feel as soon as you open your mouth, the airflow through the nose shuts off. And that tells you that you need to work on being able to produce a sound that comes out of the nose as well as the mouth. And if you listen for just a bit, you'll hear as I shut off the airflow through the nose. It produces a different voice quality. If I go back to a full open sound, then I have a natural voice. But listen now as I shut off the sound through the nose. It's a different voice quality. You would like to have the full voice quality available. Let's try it. Finger under the nose. You're going to hum, me, and only you know whether that airflow shut off. If it did, think about practicing.
And also in differentiating, because it was asked, how does that compare? One of the things you're doing with that lip buzz is going to not only give you a little more sense of that muscle control and truly awareness, but it also is reinforcing the idea of staying loose here. And that's really important, to stay as loose as you can, to have the least amount of restriction in those areas. The question was, do we know about an exercise called snuffling, having to do with inhalation of salt water and some for clearing sinuses, and not as a vocal exercise, no. But I'm familiar with it for people with sinus problems. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, it's tough to do it at dance. It's not a pretty sight. No. Do we have any other questions, comments, suggestions, wishes? How many people wish they could sing like Tony Oxidine? It's too late. We already got one. Right? Don't need another.
Thank you to Jim and John for being part of this discussion. Thank you for attending. And what time is supper tonight, Jim? You got your schedule out there? 7 o'clock, I believe. 6:30 the door opens. And there will be, I believe, cash bar available, and there will be a demonstration of kaleidoscope dancing there. So see you there.